Hey guys, Dustin Fox here from Top Agent Happy Hour. Hope you were able to listen to last week's episode where we chose our first three of our top 10 six books that will most greatly impact your real estate business. We had to break up the episode because it was so long at an hour and a half, but this week you get our final three and we hope you like them.
Welcome to the Top Agent Happy Hour podcast, where you'll learn how to build a real estate career worth celebrating. Join us as real estate's top producers, industry insiders, and team leaders pull back the curtain, sharing secrets and actionable ideas for attracting clients, delivering great service, and closing deals. You'll also go beyond the deal, learning how to connect with your why, be authentically awesome, and build your will to win. And now let's join your real estate rock star hosts from Pearson Smith Realty, Richard Bridges and Dustin Fox.
All right, so my third and final book. So we started with influence. You're going to read this, get the psychology down before you even consider putting pen to paper. Then you've read The Ultimate Sales Machine to find the system and, sequentially how you're going to reach out to these people that you really want to work with. And then the last one, I promise I didn't want it to be all titles that started with ultimate, but this is The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. If you guys can't tell by now, I'm a huge direct marketing fan. I fell in love with it when I got into real estate because I personally did not have the cojones or the mental makeup to pick up the phone and call these people. But I said, you know what, I've always been kind of a letter writer. And I think I could probably persuasively put my thoughts down on paper versus like not have to deal with the rejection over the phone. So when I started getting involved in direct marketing, I mean, you guys can see the books behind me. I started devouring every single thing I could read on the subject because advertising is salesmanship in print. So I can send these things out. I can only talk to a single person at a single time, or if I'm on a podcast, I can hit a lot of people or on a live. But when you're writing to a single individual and the power of what you've written has persuaded them to pick up the phone and call you, the first time that happens to you, it's going to be a light bulb moment and say, holy crap, like I can mass produce this and send this out to a lot of people and really impact my business. So instead of doing what I saw a lot of successful agents doing is just calling and picking up the phone and calling expired and withdrawals. And other agents were seeing me get expired and withdrawals. And it was funny. Some of them said like, man, I was door knocking and calling. And I thought that's what you were doing the whole time. I said, no, I can't do that personally. I can't. I put myself in the client's shoes. Like I know they're frustrated. I don't want to add to their frustration. So this book will give you more of the nuts and the bolts after you've got their persuasion down, after you've got the actual system down. You read this and figure out how to actually do your letter. So remember, when I was brand new and I didn't have a lot of business, so I had more time on my side, I was handwriting all of these letters. I was taking the time to handwrite them. My wife thought I was psychotic. She's like, you're in your basement for 6 to 8 hours handwriting these letters. But I knew if I hand wrote them, it would have more impact. Now I'm busy or I don't have the time to do that. I have more standard forms. But the first thing you want to think of that Dan Kennedy talks about is find the conversation that's already going inside your potential client's head. So, for example, if they're expired or withdrawn, the conversation that's already going inside their head is like, I'm super frustrated. All these agents are contacting me. They're all full of shit, pardon my French. They're all promising me the world. And where were all these people when I was trying to sell my house earlier? Now all of a sudden they have buyers and they think they can sell my house. So you have to know that that's the conversation that's going on in their mind and acknowledge that in your letter. Like you get that out of the way early. Like I realize that this is what you're going through and I completely understand your pain points and I can get more in the specifics on the actual letters that I write. But that's really their mindset starting off. The next thing is research. If you're doing a vague letter to somebody's house, it's not going to feel specific or personalized to them. So whenever people say, oh, Dustin, I'm just not that creative. I'm not going to be able to write that much stuff. Or that type of feedback that I get from agents, I don't have the creativity to write the headlines or write these things. The problem isn't creativity. The problem is just research. If
Right.
you should have, like if you're going to spend 4 hours on something, like a listing presentation, 3 hours of it should be research to see how you can better, better present this property differently than it was before. So
Right.
one of the things that I do for every listing or for every sales letter or every headline I'm trying to write, it sounds really old fashioned, but for me, pen to paper, if I have an idea or if I see something in a book and I have an idea, I write it on a 3x5 business card or a 3x5 index card. I mean, I literally have a book. How cheesy is this? This index card book that says ideas. And when you open it, I have index cards that are labeled Facebook ad headlines, content headlines, postcard ideas, ad formulas. And when I am stuck and I have a listing that's been on the market for a couple of weeks and I need something fresh, I can go back to these 3x5 cards, circle through them. I'm like, oh, that headline's perfect for that house. And
That's awesome.
you always have new content. Remember, people do not buy things for what they are. They buy things for what they do. So you're not buying a hammer, you're buying a hammer to put a nail into a wall.
Right.
So when you're listing and this is great for listing descriptions, when you're listing all of the features of the house, you want to list all the benefits of that and try to include that as much in your listing description. And when you're writing a sales letter to a potential expired or withdrawn, you just listing bullet points of like, oh, I'm going to do HDR photographs, or I'm going to do drone video, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It should always be followed by what the benefit of whatever you're doing for them, how is that going to benefit them as the seller? You have to have that mindset constantly. Another good technique that they tell you in this is to create a damaging admission and address the flaws openly. By acknowledging, you build credibility and you can answer recipients' questions, objections, and concerns. So an example of this is saying, like, in storytelling in your letters, you can say, when I was a new agent 4 years ago, I had a listing that, I was having the toughest time selling, and I'm going to be just completely transparent. I wasn't able to get it done. They asked me to do this. I kept trying to find new and innovative ways. But you eventually spin what you learn from that experience. Or what I do is I tell the experience of, I try to sell my house with the same agent that helped us buy our house. And me being the overbearing, pushy person that I am, I kept asking her every time she asked me for a price reduction, yeah, but what are you doing to sell my house? So what are you doing to market my house? Because I hear you're asking me to do a price adjustment. So even if your clients aren't telling you that, know the conversation in the back of their mind and be ready to deal with that before they present it to you.
Be proactive.
I have clients tell me, well, obviously you've done everything you can. I mean, you got 100,000 views on this house. Like there's nothing else I can do except for price. I don't even have to ask for a price reduction sometimes. They just tell me to do it. So
Absolutely.
And then one of the most, really the most important thing in regarding to your direct mail letters is getting your letter delivered. You guys have maybe heard me in the past talk about A pile, B pile letters, or everybody sorts their mail the same way over the trash can. So, if you have the money and the expense to set yourself apart, the most efficient way is using reciprocity, deliver it, and give a gift with the letter. That's going to set you apart more than anybody else. So when I was brand new, I used to bring a pie, and I had a Trader Joe's bag with my sales letter or my marketing package, and I would put it on the back post of the mailbox. So I wasn't breaking any rules. That I didn't have the cojones to go knock on the door. I was so scared. So and then that happened, and people would call me and say like what pies? Like, is that like a real estate thing? You got like deliver pies? I've never seen that before. But they called me to thank me from a reciprocity standpoint. And when you have the time and you're early, you can set yourself apart by doing things like that. The next best thing after that, in my opinion, is delivering it in something official. We talked about authority as a principle earlier. So if it's in a FedEx envelope or priority mail envelope, that's going to get open no matter what. They're like, oh, what is this? Like that's going to demand attention.
Right.
Then next,
there's a reason they put foreclosure notices in FedEx envelopes, because they need to get read.
correct. And then the next, and I'm a big proponent of this, is first class stamps. So I call it like the sneak attack whenever I'm doing a neighborhood letter, like for an open house or a just listed or just sold. It has my name, my address, nothing about my business on there. If you can handwrite the letter, your return rate, I mean, there's been multiple studies. If it's handwritten and it has a first class stamp, 98% of the time it's going to get opened because they think it's personal mail. So if you have the time on your hands to not do the tax record labels, and you have the time to actually handwrite all of those, your stuff is getting open and paid. It's going to be seen. So the advantage of the first class stamp is most people, when they use real estate third-party services to send things, it has an indicia on it. And anything with an indicia or anything saying like Pearson Smith Realty, if it looks like an advertisement, they're going to throw it away. And I'm not discounting, the strength of postcards, because I do EDM myself because of the cost, and I can hit 5,000 homes for much less expensive than I can use a first class stamp. But if it has a real live stamp, whether it's bulk or first class, it's going to get opened 9 times more than if it looks like a fake bill or some advertisement. So keep that in mind always. And then when they do open your letter, you want to avoid them getting that, oh, yuck feeling. So if you're going to sneak them by saying like, this looks like something personal, they open it up. But if the first thing is like your Pearson Smith Realty stuff, it's going to immediately say, oh, yuck. I thought this wasn't an advertisement, but it is. So you have to kind of create your letters like that to not feel that way. And you could do that. The book has many headlines, many starters to make it seem like it's content and not just like an oh yuck feeling. And another thing that I love, and when you're sending things, is in the business they call them grabbers. So the reciprocity thing, you give a small gift, and this is also big in Chet Holmes' book, is you do a small gift. You can't do something too nice, because then it feels like you're trying to bribe them for their business. It has to be like a small gesture or something tied in. I have some of these that have been great, and then I have some of these that are been some of the worst ideas I have ever done in any business whatsoever. And they normally happen because I'm going to sleep, I'm reading a sales book, and I've taken my Ambien, and I go down to Deb and I'm like, oh my God, I have the idea. And she's like, maybe you want to wait till the morning to think of this? And she's like, I'm like, well, just hear me out. And this is pretty embarrassing to say on the podcast, but I think I was watching Legally Blonde with Kylie, like the musical, and or the movie or something. And Elle Woods, she does all of her letters with like the perfume, and I was thinking like landscaping, like one of my sequential letters. I was like, babe, I have to test it. I have to see if it's going to serve more notice. So I put this rose oil, this is like real rose oil, on the letters. And it was like a wake up and smell the roses. Like, if you go with me, I'll we'll take care of your landscaping. Like, the curb appeal is the most important thing of your house.
Yeah.
Flopped. Not a single response. I sent out 100 of them, and I'm literally brushing the letters with rose oil so they can stop and smell.
You're trying to do smell marketing.
Right. I said it's worth a try. And my wife is always really good. She's like, when you have the letters, Dan Kennedy talks about first step, you have an idea, you think it's good. I get it. You read it out loud to yourself. You're going to find things when you read it out loud to yourself that weren't there. Then you have somebody that you trust that is going to give you honest criticism about it. And my wife is brutal. She's like, I know what you're trying to do here, but you look like an idiot. I think you're going to have nobody. I think it's going to erase all of your other sequential letters, and no one's ever going to work with you for this. And I was like, no way, it's going to work. And I basically ruined that whole thing. I should have listened to her. And then the next thing is you have a child read it, because if a child can read it and you're hearing it out loud from them, and it makes sense to them and they can articulate it, then you're going to be able to hit everybody.
Right. Super smart.
And then they talk about, again, motivate action, limited time only. One of the things I do sometimes is I say, we have 7 of our 10 listing slots for this spring already filled, or you just limit the opportunity. So they have to respond now, or for a limited time only, we're going to be offering 5% instead of 6% listing services. You're going to get everything above the first 2 people that respond to this letter, or anybody that responds by May 31st. You don't have to list by that date, but we just have to have a conversation. And then this is an old Jay Abraham thing, and it's a lot of marketing books, having a strong guarantee and a risk-free offer. So people need to feel like if they go with you, they're not going to be stuck with you. And I see a lot of agents make this mistake is I look at their listing agreement and it's like a year long and they're like, well, it's an expensive property. And they're like charging them, $1,500 or $1,200 to like pay for the photography. And I'm like, if I'm competing against you in a listing presentation and I say, look, my job is to sell your house, you shouldn't be punished because I didn't sell your house if it didn't happen. You shouldn't be stuck with me. So I do 3-month listing agreements because I tell them, like, otherwise I'm going to have to send you an addendum every week to extend the listing. So we put 3 weeks in there, but you can end it at any time for any reason at no charge to you. The photos, everything. And you're even welcome. If I don't sell your house, you can keep my photos. Like, you can keep all my marketing. That's how much, and I in the listing presentation, I say, knock on wood, nobody's ever fired me yet. So like going back to the many people, you want them to know, like, okay, am I being ridiculous, or because nobody else has fired him before?
Right.
And then storytelling in your letters, I kind of mentioned that before. Talk about previous examples. My first letter that goes out in my sequence, it has like bulleted like different experiences for different clients. I'll say, the Van Dixorn's Vienna home, and I'll say like, I did this, this, and this. Different experiences and different strategies on how I sold each of these person's houses. And then they have testimonials and contact information to be able to contact them. And then don't be afraid to answer objections in your copy. Bring them up. Again, thinking about the conversation that's already going on in their mind, and answer the questions before they even ask them in your copy.
Yep. So true.
Because that's it, man.
You don't have anything to hide that way, right? If you're preemptively handling an objection, they're like, that was genuinely my concern, and he brought it up, or she brought it up. Then it comes across as you're way more transparent and less like it's less salesy. It's more in line with managing the expectations from jump, and then going ahead and clearing a hurdle. And if you let them bring it up, then you have to deal with it. If you bring it up proactively, then they have to think on the spot how, they have to be, they're putting in the hot seat. You're not in the hot seat. So I really love it.
So sorry, I forgot I had a back page in my notes here. So the most important thing besides the headline, or just most important thing, is getting your letter open. Second most important thing is the headline. So, the first line should get them to read the second line. The second line needs to be good to read the third line. But even with all of that being good, the last thing that people are going to do, they're going to skim the letter and they're going to go down to your name to see who it's coming from. And they're going to read the PS. So the PS, besides the headline, the postscript is it's like a second headline. You can summarize things. You can make a limited time. You just really have to, utilize that space in your letter. He talks a lot about spacing, boldface, how to lay out your letter to make it eye-catching and not be just all words and hard on the eyes. Making sure that you're not writing cold fish sales letters. They never really work. Your letters need to have personality. So a way that you can do this is if you're doing a listing presentation for a friend and if they don't mind you recording the listing presentation, like you get their permission, say like, I'm doing this for training. Because you don't know when you're speaking and you're excited about something, things that you're missing that you could be putting in writing that you're really excited about, or that's showing your personality in the letter. So you just don't want it to be boring. And this goes back kind of to your elevator pitch. You must be able to romanticize your product or service, find something for the reader to get excited about or to inspire hope in. Because they're already dejected. If it's expired or withdrawn, they already don't think their house is going to sell right now. They're like, I don't know what to do. So you have to be able to inspire genuine hope. And then what I do with my headlines is I'll split test all of them. If I'm thinking of a really good sales letter, I'll do the same audience, the same dollar spend, $10 a day, and I'll split test 5 to 10 different headlines, and I'll let the public decide what gets the most clicks. That's what I'll use in my letter.
Cool. No,
So
I like it. Dude, that one was a meaty book. And you know what's interesting is just kind of going back and forth on these. And again, for our listeners, we didn't know what each other picked. So I mean, we could have been doing the same books, but luckily we didn't. Now that I know all three of yours. But how many things are complementary? Like the last thing you were just talking about, you got to have a message that inspires. That goes all the way back to the Start With Why book. Inspiring people truly requires a real defined purpose. You know, it's these things. I mean, they're not concepts that are like, you're not going to a lot of times read a book and like have your mind blown, but they're going to put it in an order chronologically in your mind that just makes sense. And you're going to go, yeah, that does make sense. And you might have even heard it a different way. But that's why I think these books are great in a lot of ways, is because there's definitely some core underlying themes between them. And it's just funny. Just in the three you picked and the three I picked, how many similarities there are. And you talked about consistent actions earlier, just consistently doing those small things. Well, that's my third book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which I think there's a lot of people that would argue this is kind of like a really, really strong playbook for anybody who maybe you're coming at this, you're getting into a new business, or you're just starting out in real estate and you want to make a difference. Well, the whole core philosophy of the compound effect is small, consistent actions over a long period of time pay off more intensely than large but short gains, right? So large, like grand gestures, you're trying to do that. If you're trying to hit a grand slam every time, your batting average is probably going to be far more garbage than someone who's just playing ball to get on base. Hey, just looking for the base hit, the base hit, right? Incremental growth, 1% improvement every day in your life over 365 days makes a 365% growth over a year. That's the whole idea of the compound effect. So Darren Hardy's awesome, by the way. He's a speaker. He has a magazine called Success Magazine. Maybe some of you guys have subscribed to it. He's the editor-in-chief of that magazine. He created it. And he's also got a daily like motivational video on Facebook called Darren Daily. So you guys can, like that page and check out those inspirational tidbits every day. But they typically almost always follow this compound effect. So it's interesting, I had so many takeaways from this book. It was really hard for me to pick just a few. What a lot of us think is that we have to learn, like I was just saying a minute ago, we have to learn this new idea, right? This new concept in order to revolutionize our business. And really a core tenet of this book is it's not new information that you need, it's a new action plan. You need to do it differently is probably more likely the culprit to the impediment to your success than you being like, I've got to revolutionize and basically burn it down and start new. It's not, the concepts and the ideas are typically already there. And to give you an idea of how the compounding effect works, I mean, I wish I knew the quote, but I think it was Ben Franklin also, the compounding interest, or no, it was Warren Buffett, I think said compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world, right? And how it works. So they use an example. If you take a single penny and you double it for 30 days, at the end of 30 days, you'll have $3 million cash. But you don't break $1 million until like day 28 and a half. So it's almost the very end. And there was another book I really wanted to suggest here in replace, and I kind of jostled back and forth. It's kind of looked at as like the grandfather of personal development, which is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Been around forever. He interviewed the most successful people on the planet, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, all these people to find out what consistently successful people did. And he's got an anecdote in there. And then subsequently they wrote a book about it called 3 Feet from Gold. And it's this concept that so many people, and I think this is so true in real estate, quit 3 feet from gold. And so there's an anecdote you can watch. There's a YouTube video. There's like little short clip notes you can read up on it. But there was a prospector, and it was during the gold rush in the United States. He lived in Boston. He sold all of his material wealth, moved to, I think it was Alaska, I think it was Alaska. I could be wrong, but we'll just say it was Alaska. And he goes there and he finds this tract of land and he is convinced there's gold. And he starts excavating it and he's drilling and he's digging and he's just spent all of his life savings on this process and this endeavor of basically finding gold on this tract of land. And he doesn't. It's a year, and then a year turns into 2 years, and 2 years turns into 3 years. And I think he's in his third year, and he's almost bankrupt. And he has been excavating all over this tract of land, and he cannot find it. And a local gentleman he met, like I think at a bar, who had no background in prospecting, but had a background in geology, came out, looked at the property, and thought to himself, dude, there's definitely gold here. He was right. I will buy all your stuff. And he bought it for like pennies on the dollar because this dude is just broke. He's going back home with his tail between his legs. Like, that's it. So he sells it to him. Come to find out, the last tunnel that this guy had been building or had been digging, excavating, when the new prospector went in, he excavated 3 feet and found the largest gold vein in the United States history. And it just is like, oh my God, that guy was 3 feet from changing the rest of his life and all of his descendants' life. Like he could have just made it. But he gave up and someone else benefited from his hard work. And I think that that's a big thing, is that staying consistent, not quitting 3 feet from gold is a big piece. And I know how to throw that in there. Think and Grow Rich is a great book. But the other core tenets, I'll give these last two because I know we were running long on this, but simple daily disciplines are going to play the biggest roles in you obtaining your goals. It isn't, again, about swinging for the fences and hitting. It's about, how do I make myself just 1% better than yesterday? And that's a common theme you'll see in books like The Power of Habit by, I think, Charles Duhigg, and then Atomic Habits. Can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I just read that book. Both are amazing, very similar. They complement this, talking about how do you instill and create and cultivate habits that ultimately help improve you in small, incremental, measurable ways, because long-term, the compounding effect is going to take hold and it's going to change your life. So you have to ask yourself every day when you wake up, what small thing can you do today to be better than yesterday? And basically your decisions, regardless of how big or small, are ultimately the culmination of where you are today. So if you are unhappy with where you are today, you should examine each and every decision that you've made over the last several years, because your current life circumstances are 100% a result of the decisions you've made up to this point. So that's really the key takeaways in that book. It's awesome. 100% recommend you read it along with those other ones I recommended, which Power of Habit, Atomic Habit, and Think and Grow Rich. I mean, it was really hard for me to narrow it down to 3, but I mean, we just bit into all of the elephants. Like, we were trying to eat all the elephants today, Dustin. I don't know how you feel about it, but that was.
No, I love it. I think that there's a ton of actionable things, even if there's somebody that's just, I meet a lot of agents and like, Dustin, I just don't read the books. There's an excellent app. If you're not a big reader, Blinkist, they have audio and the app where it's like Cliff Notes for all of these books. You can go on there and pay $12 a month or $79 a year. And you can get everything you really need, all the big takeaways from the book. I personally need the book. I like to write in the margins. I like to be able to reference it later on. I like to hear the stories behind some of them so it can help make connections for me. So the Cliff Notes don't really work that well for me, but I can understand why somebody that's busy or is not a big reader, why it would be a little bit more difficult for them.
Yeah.
So
Cool, man.
Richard, how does somebody get a hold of you, my friend? They have
Facebook.
a referral. They have a referral, DC metro area. They're an agent thinking about, working in DC, Maryland, or in Virginia for a brokerage office. How do they get a hold of you?
For sure. They can reach out to me on social media. Just Richard Bridges, you'll find me. I have a very sensual Facebook profile picture of me kissing my wife. So that's there, steamy. And then the other option is probably email would be best. richard.bridges at pearsonsmithrealty.com, and that'll come right to my phone. And I, again, trying to practice these, habits of highly effective people. I will be very communicative and get in touch with you and prioritize, let first things be first, right? So I will get right back in touch with you and look forward to connecting. That'd be awesome. And Dustin, same to you, man. If somebody wanted to reach out, talk to you a little bit more about the podcast, PSR, your business in general, or they'd like to do business with you, what's the best way they can connect?
I am also on Facebook, Dustin.fox. I don't have a sensual picture. In fact, it's a family and there's like a puppet in there, which is weird, but my daughter's in theater. That just happens to be my profile pic now. But Dustin Fox, there's a few of us out there. Or dustin.fox at Pearson Smith Realty. .com, or hit me up on my cell, 703-927-1461.
Beautiful, man. Well, that's it for us this week. Hope you guys really enjoyed the content of this week and the books, and we really hope you guys will listen, pick them up, and reach out and let us know your thoughts. Also, if you like the podcast, found it valuable, please write, review, subscribe. All those things are super helpful in helping us continue to put together valuable content each and every week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until next week, that's this week's Top Agent Happy Hour.
Thanks a lot.